Civil unrest in Venezuela as the country continues its slide into a socialist black hole. Low oil prices and rampant corruption combine to cause acute shortages of almost everything. The nation's capital, Caracas, is now the most violent city in the world, with more murders last year in this one city than in all the countries of the European Union put together. Reports are surfacing from around the country of people hunting dogs, cats, and pigeons for food, and demonstrations are cropping up to protest the harsh conditions. On the country's western border with Colombia sits Cúcuta, a city of 600,000. Almost a year ago, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro closed the border with Colombia after an attack by alleged Colombian paramilitaries. But the severe shortages are changing that. The people are defying the border closures en masse, with over 100,000 people crossing this bridge into Cúcuta in the space of one weekend. Thousands of people are streaming back across the border into San Antonio, Venezuela, after coming across into Colombia yesterday to buy things that they just can't get anymore in Venezuela. Things like toilet paper, toothpaste, rice, sugar, very simple everyday items. But they're saying that the stores there are empty and the people are going hungry. Raul Pineda had to skip meals in order to be able to feed his children.
There's no medicine, very little food. The food the country produces isn't enough for everyone.
Several months ago, Raul escaped with his wife and children to Colombia.
Since the border is closed, we had to pay a bribe to cross, and our family stayed behind.
But the situation isn't much better for Venezuelan refugees inside Colombia. Jobs are so scarce that many turn to prostitution or crime, while those who bring money with them find that it doesn't last long.
1 month's pay only covers about 2 days of food.
This brings to light a bigger problem. Many Venezuelans cry for joy when they see fully stocked shelves in Colombia, only to cry again when they find out how little their money will buy. Marlenis Peña's grocery store sits only a few hundred meters from the border crossing. She's doing a very brisk business.
The people really don't know how little their money will buy here, so they fill their carts, and when they come to the register, they find out they only have enough for the essentials.
The money changers along the border say Venezuelan bolivars are nearly worthless. In 2012, they were worth about 25 cents apiece, but today, $1 US will buy almost 900 bolivars. As hyperinflation sets in, experts are predicting a 1,600% increase in inflation next year, which means a dollar could buy as many as 90,000 bolivars. He says to buy a loaf of bread, I would almost need a bag full of this currency in Venezuela. The only problem is there isn't any bread in Venezuela, and that's why the people are coming across the border here to Colombia. Local churches are stepping in to help with care packages and even provide housing for their neighbors who are in need. In the meantime, Colombia and Venezuela are in talks to reopen this border crossing as a humanitarian corridor on a more permanent basis.
At first, it was a little difficult, but thanks to God and to the church that helped us to be able to live here, well, here we are.
2 bomb blasts have killed at least 44 and wounded over 170 in the northeastern Syrian city of Qamishli near the Turkish border. Syrian state television reports one blast was from a car bomb and the other from a bomb on a motorbike. ISIL has claimed responsibility for the suicide bombing, saying they've targeted Kurdish security forces. Qamishli, which is largely controlled by the Kurds, has been the target of repeated bombings by the ISIL.
Southern California fire crews faced a 4th day of relentless flames. The sand fire has consumed at least 10,000 acres of land a day, almost the equivalent of 10,000 football fields. LA County Deputy Fire Chief John Tripp.
I've been in the fire service for 38 years. We've never had this kind of experience, and that's a testimony to what we're going through with the drought.
More than 3,000 firefighters are battling this blaze in 105-degree heat on the ground and in the air. 10,000 homes are under a mandatory evacuation. The wind changed directions so many times that the speed of the fire surprised a lot of homeowners.
It came blowing into their communities. They're having to run out, and then we have firefighters having to run in with a blowtorch coming out.
Police swarmed this neighborhood just southeast of San Diego late Thursday night.
We have 2 officers down.
even into the area. We do not know where the shots are coming from.
2 officers from the San Diego Police Department, part of a gang suppression unit, were shot while making a routine traffic stop. One of the officers was killed after being hit in the torso multiple times. The other was rushed into surgery at Scripps Mercy Hospital.
One of the officers was placed in a vehicle of another officer that arrived on scene and taken to the hospital. Heroic efforts by the officers on scene, heroic efforts by the doctors to save his life. But
police apprehended a Hispanic male who was also shot and is being treated at an area hospital.
The San Diego police officer who died leaves behind a wife and 2 children.
A mosquito-borne epidemic spreading through the Americas for months has arrived in the United States. Today in Florida, 4 Zika virus infections from mosquito bites were confirmed. Zika causes severe birth defects, and today health officials said Americans should take precautions, particularly women of childbearing years.
Today, more than 10 teams of disease detectives were canvassing a touristy area known as Wynwood, just north of downtown Miami, and now identified as the Zika zone. The 4 patients, 3 men and a woman, were infected in early July, got sick the next week, and diagnosed a few days later. By interviewing the patients and their friends and family, travel and sex were ruled out as means of transmission. And state disease detectives honed in on 1 square mile, Wynwood, as the area where they may have been infected. Infectious disease doctor Eileen Marty was one of the team leaders asking people for voluntary urine samples today.
The door-to-door urine request is what has allowed the state of Florida to make the determination that ongoing mosquito transmission is happening in this specific area.
What led you to this area to start asking for those samples?
Because of where the symptomatic individuals had come from.
One symptomatic person, you start door knocking and you find other cases.
Officials believe local transmission began this way. The person became infected with Zika abroad and then traveled to the U.S. The infection stays in the bloodstream for a week. When a local mosquito bites the person with Zika virus and then bites someone else, the infection is transmitted.
I'd like to see that.
Zika is particularly dangerous for pregnant women, as the virus can cause severe birth defects.
The U.S. military has confirmed 14 new civilian deaths resulting from the bombing campaign against ISIL in Iraq and Syria. The announcement from the U.S. Central Command followed an internal investigation into 6 U.S. airstrikes between July 28th last year and April 29th this year. The official civilian death toll has reached 55. Critics of the U.S.-led airstrikes have accused the coalition of understating the number of collateral civilian deaths. The London-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says around 600 Syrians, including 136 children, have been killed in coalition airstrikes since September 2014, while Air Wars, another NGO, estimates that the airstrikes in Syria and Iraq have killed more than 1,500 civilians.
Floods and landslides in Nepal and India have killed more than 90 people and forced at least 2 million residents to evacuate. In Nepal alone, 73 people were killed. Puchen district was the worst hit area, where dozens of houses have been swept away. Elsewhere in the country, many structures like bridges were damaged by floods.